Alicia Kearns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Liberation Day. That is how Mandelson described the day of Epstein's release from prison for procuring children to be trafficked and raped. Mandelson's next message was, "How is freedom feeling?" Epstein replied, "She feels fresh, firm and creamy." Mandelson's next reply, "Naughty boy." Now, we hadn't seen this email, I'll admit, when the ambassador was appointed. But let's look at what we did know when he was appointed ambassador. We knew at that point that he had consoled this paedophile, consoled him on his being found guilty and convicted for just one of the many, many crimes he committed. We also knew that while he was Deputy Prime Minister of this country and Business and Trade Secretary, carrying the flag of our great nation on an official visit to New York, he stayed in a convicted paedophile's flat. How dare he do that while representing this country? But the idea that no one in the Cabinet Office, no one at the Department of Business and Trade, no civil servant, no political appointee knew that he'd said, "No, I don't need a hotel, thank you ever so much. I'm going to stay at my friend Epstein's house. Oh, by the way, he happens to currently be in prison, incarcerated, but I'm going to stay at his house anyway." That, to me, raises serious questions about why he was not pursued for misconduct in public office back at that point. And no one can say that the Labour government did not know, because having been a civil servant, I knew where my ministers were staying when they're abroad. Not sure they always wanted me to know, but I knew. And none of them would have ever done that. This is the heart of the issue with the judgment of the Prime Minister. Now, on Monday, one of its ministers, the government's minister, said nobody objected when Mandelson was appointed. I would say, look at Hansard, I remember objecting very, very clearly and repeatedly, because it was very clear at that point that Mandelson had repeatedly said that Epstein did not deserve to be in prison, that this was an awful time for him, how he was caring and thinking for his good friend. Why was there no investigation, and why was the vetting not done right? Because there is no question that the vetting cannot have been conducted properly. I have been through vetting myself. Now, I accept it was not as a minister, but as a civil servant, I've been sat in a room with a rather elderly gentleman for 2 hours, asked about my every sexual proclivity, asked about when I lost my virginity, asked about whether I'd taken drugs or not, asked about every single aspect of my life. Because civil servants, whether they be apolitical or politicians in this place, should hold themselves accountable and be right to be appointed for these roles. It is quite clear from the debate today, and from the evidence given by the Right Honourable Member for Malden, that the Prime Minister wanted this done. And because the Prime Minister wanted Mandelson, Mandelson was going to be appointed. Now, we will see when the docs are released how they were able to get round the official vetting. But this draws my concerns to another political appointment that was rushed through because the Prime Minister demanded it, and that was Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor. This is another appointment where there are significant concerns about his business interests, significant concerns of this House that there has been no scrutiny of Jonathan Powell as National Security Advisor because he will not come before this House. He will not give evidence to this House. His relationships in China, his relationships around the world. And yet Jonathan Powell is permitted, again flying the flag of this nation, conduct secret visits to China where he meets with Wang Yi and other senior representatives, where the British government refuses to put out any press notice explaining why the visit happened, or even the fact the visit happened at all.
Will she give way on that?
I will happily give way on that point.
My honourable friend, she's, as usual, giving a very good speech. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I was a former Special Advisor at the Cabinet Office, a great department with great civil servants. But my honourable friend has mentioned the case of Jonathan Powell and Lord Mandelson when he was Deputy Prime Minister. Does she not agree with me that this kind of backhanded way of conducting government business without officials being present actually puts pressure on our great civil servants and puts them in a very difficult situation? It's not how government should be run.
Absolutely, I agree entirely with my very good friend. I was actually very taken back earlier by the comments of the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, who sought to give us a lecture in how vetting is undertaken by government, where she kept referring to fast-stream civil servants were the ones responsible for the vetting. Fast stream is a mode of recruitment. It is not once you are made a civil servant. And it did feel like she was trying to suggest that there were junior civil servants who should be taking the can for the vetting process that was pursued. And I very much hope that is not the case, because it would be deeply inappropriate if it were. But the two commonalities between the appointment of Lord Mandelson and of Jonathan Powell are Morgan McSweeney. So I must ask whether or not Morgan McSweeney is the one who here should be held accountable. Because at this point it looks like no one is going to be held accountable. I will very happily give way.
Today's debate is about accountability. Everything falls at the lap of the Prime Minister. Does she find it quite frankly incredible that the Prime Minister has sent, with all of the greatest respect, a junior minister to the dispatch box when he alone has serious questions to answer? And would it not show real leadership that he came to that dispatch box tonight to wind up this debate?
My right honourable friend is absolutely right, and he may also recall that following Prime Minister's questions today, I had no choice but to make a point of order, because the Prime Minister told this House that every humble address that their party had put forward in opposition had a national security protection clause. And yet, when I looked at the November 2024, the last two that they had done in opposition, neither features the word national or security, let alone the two put together. But the Prime Minister put his, in just a moment, but the Prime Minister in contrast put his hand up to me and dismissed me, shaking his arm at me as he left the chamber, as if the point I was making was not one that was necessary. And yes, on Monday, members will also recall, he shouted that I was pathetic for asking why he met with the master of the two Chinese spies when he went to China recently. If the honourable gentleman would still like to intervene, I'm very happy to take his intervention.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'll take the honourable member's word for it that those humble addresses didn't contain those words. But if you take, for example, the humble address on Lebedev's appointment to the House of Lords in 2022, it didn't have to contain those words for the Conservative government to use national security grounds to not provide swathes of documents, precisely, doing it without the words even being included, and actually using rhetoric in the response that they were almost mirroring the Freedom of Information Act in the types of exemptions that should be applied. Are you really going to deny that that was the approach to dealing with a humble address?
Two uses of the word used. Sit down. I haven't said anything. It's the Honourable Lady who has made a comment, but any intervention needs to be via the chair.
Apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm out of practice on my interventions, obviously. Would the Honourable Lady like to respond to that, and is she aware of the convention?
The honourable gentleman, because I agree he should hold his government to exactly those standards. That is the point that I made precisely, and I'm very sorry that he missed my point of order. I recognise it was not a showstopper. However, that is exactly the point that I made. It is implicit within these, and if the government had tried to put wording in their amendments such as secret or top secret documents cannot be revealed, I would have said yes. That is absolutely fair, but that was the exact point. There is no requirement to stipulate national security, let alone some vague wording around international relationships, because it is already provided for. So I'm thankful to him for confirming exactly my position. Now, we've touched on China here. I do hope that when these documents are released, we will see also the full extent of the relationship between Epstein, not just with the Putin state, but also with the Chinese Communist Party, because I do have deep concerns about the way in which Mandelson had a say over the current government's China policy, because there is no question that he has been in there and influencing that. Now, when it comes to what is still unanswered, as I have raised almost every day this week, on the 5th of December, I wrote to the government, in fact I wrote to the Cabinet Secretary, I should be accurate, and asked the details of Mandelson's severance package. These were not complicated questions. It was, what was the detail of the contract and will it be published? Has any NDA been signed at any point to do with it? When did Mandelson receive his final payment, or is he still being paid by the taxpayer? And what were the details of his severance package? We are almost 2 months on, and I have received no response from the Cabinet Secretary, who, as we have discussed today in this chamber, almost ad nauseum, we do not have confidence to be able to carry out this inquiry. It is not a personal attack, it is recognition of the fact that he works for the Prime Minister. It is recognition of the fact that he does not reply to basic and straightforward questions from members of this House. I will happily give way to Honourable Lady.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Would she agree with me that, given that those are very basic and very straightforward questions, if she struggled to now to get that answer, and if again she struggles today to get that answer, then we can draw our own conclusions as to what the answer is?
Absolutely.
I think, unfortunately, members will slowly learn this place that where there is a vacuum of silence, our constituents, the great people of this country, see conspiracy, and too often they are sadly right. So I know that the right honourable gentleman on the front bench has committed to get me answers on my letter. Although he's currently having a conversation with someone else, I would just gently encourage him that I would like to see the answer to those questions on the severance today at the dispatch box. Because I raised it on Monday and I have received no response, it is in the motion. Please can we have those answers? I want Madam Deputy Speaker also to briefly reflect on what's happened over the last week. On Sunday, the Labour Party informed the media that they could not strip Mandelson of his membership of the Labour Party. Perhaps the honourable member for Islington, I believe it's North, would like to intervene on me on this point, because I suspect he has something to say about the Labour Party stripping the membership from its members. Then we saw the government on Monday telling this House that they cannot legislate. It would not be appropriate or possible for them to be able to legislate on this. It was too difficult, despite the entire House offering to sit until 4 a.m. to do so. We then had silence from the government when members of this House asked them to refer the matter to the police. It was quite clear from early doors that this was going to end with the police and hopefully in our courts, as I've argued it should have done back in 2010. Absolutely.
But actually she will recall that during various parliamentary occasions in this chamber on Peter Mandelson, at one stage, despite the Prime Minister knowing that he had a relationship, at one stage she and I asked the Minister a very simple question as to whether they would strip Lord Mandelson of the Labour whip. And that was refused to be answered, and they didn't. Doesn't this just show a constant lack of action from a Prime Minister that doesn't have a grip?
I found the honourable gentleman, and look, the lesson of being in government, there are many, but one of the ones I'd hope that we have learned is the writing is normally on the wall. It was very clear from early days that this man was going to let down our country, but those of us who criticised him were told, but this is imaginative, this is inspired, they're putting in place a man who can shake things up and make friends with Donald Trump. Then throughout his persistent behaviour, as more and more became clear, the Prime Minister could have taken the decisive action, because as I've said, it has been clear for a very long time that this was not just going to end up with him disgraced. It was not just going to end up with us rightly saying that he should be removed from the other place. It is going to end up with him facing court, I hope. And let me be very clear, malfeasance in public office is what he should be tried for, and that does carry a life sentence. That is how severe the crimes are that he's conducted. And I am ashamed that Gordon Brown raised the flag of warning and seems to have had nothing in response to his concerns.
On that point,
I'd be very happy to give way.
my honourable friend is making a passionate speech, and at the moment, since today's debate has started, more information is coming out, and we might be on the actual tip, and there is so much to come out. And at the moment, the PM has made a significant error of judgment, and people and his backbenchers are still defending it. Does my honourable friend believe that this has the possible chance to cause detriment to the whole of government?
Alicia Kearns. It's very difficult, particularly when your party has such a high number of new MPs, we've been there and experienced it, to feel the mood music, to hear the jungle drums and to understand whether something is a precipice, whether something is a turning point. But I think for many of us who've been reflecting over the last few days, this does have hallmarks of things that we feel we've seen before. We've been here, we've seen this sideshow. And it's very difficult, because your integrity is the only thing that you take with you when you leave this place. And that is something too many colleagues across all sides of the House have had to learn over the last few years, because this is a cruel game and you will find yourself thrown out when you do not expect it. I turn now to the manuscript amendment that has been laid today. Can I say how much I welcome the fact that this has been moved forward? This is a sign of the government listening, and I give them credit for having done so. However, as I say, all of this could have been prevented if on Monday the Prime Minister had come before this House and made more firm commitments to take action. I will very happily
thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does she agree with me, particularly following her point about the writing being on the wall, that the Minister, when he wraps up on behalf of the government, needs to quash any rumours that the Prime Minister is bunkered up in Downing Street planning a reshuffle to stabilise a ship that is sinking?
Alicia Kearns.
I can give but one comment to those new MPs who may think that a reshuffle is a good thing. It only causes more upset and heartache within your own party, and it will not solve the solution. I will very happily give way to the honourable member.
I thank the member for giving way. Does she think that the House should be slightly cautious here and not just roll over and accept the government's manuscript amendment without clear assurances of how far the inquiries are going to go, whether they relate to commercial interests rather than just security interests, and a very clear process of reporting and a timetable on it, so that this isn't just a carpet brushing exercise to get rid of an embarrassing day for the government?
Alicia Kearns.
Can I thank the honourable gentleman? I think it's quite clear that the will of the House is that that would be beyond unacceptable, and that would be a contempt of Parliament if that was what happened. But I can say, and I would like to think this goes to the entire House, that I have complete confidence in the integrity of gentlemen like my right honourable friend, the member for Kenilworth, who sits on that committee. And no one would impugn his integrity or question that he would make sure he got to the bottom of whatever is necessary. But there is no question that this goes so far beyond the vile and inhumane treatment of women, but also to the way in which I'm afraid it appears that Peter Mandelson betrayed not just his own colleagues, but his country into the financial interests of others. I will take one last intervention.
Grateful to my honourable friend for giving way, and further to that last intervention, we need assurance that we're going to have urgency. We've seen victims of child abuse in this country let down by a government which resisted an inquiry and then agreed to it in the big moment, which could be like today, where the government appears to give way, and then months passed with nobody appointed to it. So we need to hear from the Minister the government is going to move with speed to make sure this information comes out.
Alicia Kearns.
Can I thank the right honourable gentleman, because actually he's hit on a point that no one has raised in today's debate, and without it I think we would have had a real missed opportunity. There has been no commitment from the government as yet as to how quickly files will be turned over to the IC, and no commitment to how quickly all the documents mandated within this humble address will be released. That is vital. Now I'm hoping that as part of any release they will contact the Department of Justice and require the release of any additional documents that would be in our national interest, or anything that references Mandelson in any way, or indeed any British national in any way. But I think that would be something I'd ask the Minister to please confirm, because yes, any existing documents could of course be on the IC's desk by Friday. So let's make sure we do move quickly. I want to just conclude by touching once again on the incredibly brave women, without whom none of this would ever have come out. And to Virginia, who obviously is not here today to hear us debate and discuss this important issue. We have to recommit in this place that we will hear women, that we will see women, and that we will stand by women who report abuse. Because all of us have seen how easily women's concerns are dismissed, how well we are spoken over, and how we are ignored, particularly when it comes to men of power. And we have touched on some of the men today who've been named in these documents who are commercially very powerful. There are concerns about who else may come out. No one who has been named in those documents, who knew what happened to those women, should be allowed to continue to live their lives and make profits as if this didn't happen. And that must be the main commitment. I want transparency, I want those documents out. But actually, I want all of us to say, whether it's a woman in our constituency who comes to us, whether it's someone who comes to us from another part of the country in concern, that we will stand by them, because this is a stain on Britain, and we must make sure this never happens again, and that we listen to our women and that we defend them. Thank you, Madam.